In Warframe, there's loads of settings that you can tweak to make the game feel better, but also some settings that will make your overall experience and farming be quicker. Well, I'm Tipsy, and today we'll be looking at some of the most important settings that you can tweak to make the game feel better for you. So like and subscribe, and let's just get right into it. One of the first settings is the camera offset and the FOV setting, which is something that has seen some improvement lately. Before we could only change the FOV to get more field of vision, but now we also have something called the camera offset, which currently comes with 3 presets, allowing you to move the camera offset so your character blocks less of your vision while playing, and can help a great deal if you like fashion, as your frames and certain fashion pieces can take up quite a bit of your screen. So here in the setting in the camera offset, you will be able to change between the 3 different presets, the normal FOV offset to the middle point and to the far point, making it easier to see more of what you're doing in the missions. I highly recommend toying with this to find the offset you like the most. Personally, I just like the far offset, as it is quite nice to actually be able to see most of my character but also more of the screen. Another setting you can find inside the accessibility menu is the auto fire for semi-weapons. This is a setting I highly recommend using, as it will turn your semi or single shot weapons into an automatic weapon, allowing you to actually just hold down the shoot button without tapping it. And it will make it feel much smoother to use semi-weapons and actually less click intensive. So I highly recommend turning this on, as it is only a plus. Another setting you can find is the invert tap hold abilities, which is settings that work with certain warframes, as they have abilities that will either be used as a tap ability or as a hold ability. So you basically have 2 different versions of the same ability if you tap the button or if you hold the button. And this setting will allow you to change between those, so you can actually invert the settings. So maybe the hold ability is the one you use most often, so it would be nice to make that the one you just use the tap for the ability to go off. And with this setting you can do exactly that, and this is per frame, so you can fine tune it for each frame you actually run in the game. And from what I understand, changing the subsumed ability will just follow the invert tap settings from the warframe the abilities come from. So if you subsume ability onto another frame, the invert tap ability will carry from the normal frame that it actually came from. Another interesting setting is the ally highlight, which is a setting that can really help you when it comes to hunting in Warframe, as critters and various animals can have different sizes. With the ally highlight with a bright color turned to max, spotting these animals and critters in various sizes can be way easier to make your hunt easier overall, especially if you're hunting for the purple velocipods around the Cambion Drift for your LMF segment upgrade. And this can be turned on and off as you see fit. Personally, I just turn it on when I actually go on hunting. Another fun little setting is the use sniper scope, which is a setting that allows you to disable the aim HUD for snipers in Warframe, making it look just like your normal zoom in instead. This setting is more of a personal preference and knowledge based, as it will make the HUD more clear, but you will lose out on actually seeing the sniper scope effects on the weapons you are using, which means if the sniper has a 1.4x multiplier to headshot damage or something like that, you will not see it in the HUD anymore, but you will still apply the effect. The repeated button presses setting is also another great setting to turn on hold, as in any of the action sequences in the game where you normally will have to spam a button to actually keep up, you now can just hold it down instead. This is especially useful in Carl's missions, where you actually have to pull off the Narmor helmets, and you can just hold down E or the interact button you have enabled to actually complete the sequence now instead, which will overall just make it feel way better. And then of course we have the hold to sprint, which is a setting a lot of people recommend turning off, as it will allow you to just tap the sprint button to continuously sprint instead of having to hold it down all the time when playing. Personally, I'm just so used to holding it down that I don't really have it turned off, though it will make it much more smoother to run around, and you don't have to strain your fingers as much when running around if you have it on toggle instead. Then we have the setting Visual Effect Intensify, which is a setting you might want to turn down a bit if you don't want to get blinded by your teammates' abilities half the time, as certain abilities and colors do make for a very interesting combo that can actually make a pretty good flashbang effect on your screen. So maybe just take a little look at it and the visual effect and turn it a little bit down, or if you want to, you could go blind and just turn it all the way up to see all of the effects in full glory. Now we have damage numbers, which actually have quite a few settings to play around with, as they are quite a fundamental part of your gameplay experience in Warframe. One of the first settings to take a look at here is the show damage numbers settings, where you have 3 different modes, which are the enhanced, the cloud and the legacy mode, which will change how the damage numbers appears on your screen. And as you can see here, the damage numbers can actually cluster up quite a bit of your screen. So personally, I like the enhanced setting, the way the numbers actually are jumping away from the target I'm shooting, so I can see more clearly where I'm shooting at. But if you enjoy the more condensed look of the numbers around the enemies, you could go with the cloud instead, or the legacy ones. In the end, it is very much a personal preference for these settings and how you like to play. There's also something called the compact damage number settings, which allows you to change your long form numbers into their compact versions instead. So instead of seeing a 10 million with 7 zeros, the damage number will change into a 10 with a M afterwards for 10 millions instead. And this will just make the damage numbers more compact and fill less of your screen, as the setting implies. There's also extra settings you can play around with here to actually get the damage numbers to fit your own playstyle and look that you actually wanted to go for. So try to play around with them until you find a point you're actually happy with. Now with the damage numbers, there's actually a few things we can change also, but this also implies all of the other colors in the game. So there's something called the HUD colors in the game, which is a very interesting setting, as this actually allows us to basically change any of the HUD colors we see in the game to fit the look we like the most. And if you want to, you could also change your damage numbers to red, so it looks like you're getting super critical hits all the time. But remember, this is only the colors you're changing and not how the game works. There's so many things you can change the colors of, but I've played the game for quite a bit now, and changing the colors feels kind of weird. So I highly recommend doing this early on if you are going to do it. There's also another setting that actually changes the visual look of the game, which is called the UI theme colors. This is a setting that I would say is rather more of a cosmetic than a setting in total fairness, but it is still something where you can actually change the UI theme of the colors in game. So inside this setting, you will be able to actually choose a theme depending on 3 different settings. So you have the main theme, then you have the background, and you have the sound. And there's themes inside all these 3 settings, and you'll be able to change them to different preset or pre-made, I guess, filters or UI packs, which you can then choose. But these themes do cost a bit of plat to actually unlock, but you do get some of them for free to choose from the start. So you can change it a little bit, but otherwise you will have to pay plat for it. There's not a lot of different themes to change between, but there's a few that can change the overall look of your UI and fit the profile a little bit better that you actually like. I like to use the legacy theme as it makes the UI a little bit more white without making it too bright in the colors, kind of like the Nidus, Orican and Tenno theme does, where everything becomes a little bit too bright, where the legacy theme kind of keeps it on a middle ground, not making it too dark and not making it too bright. So it's mostly up to you just finding a theme that you like, but it will cost around 50 plat for them, and it is a permanent unlock, so you'll have the themes forever. Now, as we are talking about colors and themes and everything, there's also the colorblind settings, which is a setting I also recommend taking a look at, especially if you are colorblind, as there is a lot of colors going around in Warframe. So it is quite nice if you are in this category where you might have a need for this to actually take a look at it, as it allows for 3 different presets, and here you can actually also filter for the strength at the presets. So maybe take a look at this if this is something you might have needed in the game. Then another setting called Mark Your Pet is a small little quality of life setting that can be turned on and off, and it will not change much, but after playing for quite some time, I still get confused sometimes where my pet is at, and this little setting will allow you to actually skip that, as you will now have a little marker on top of your pet so you always knows where your pet is at. As these videos do take some time to make, remember to like the video and subscribe for more Warframe content. It is greatly appreciated if you do so. Click the little button underneath. Now, something I would personally recommend turning off is the VSync setting. This is recommended as Warframe is a fast-paced game, and VSync could happen to introduce some input lag and just weird game feel at times, so I recommend turning it off. If you do have problems with like screen tear, I recommend using the max frame rate setting instead to limit your FPS. Motion blur and screen shakes are also 2 settings I would recommend turning off again, as Warframe is a fast-paced with a lot of action, so motion blur can be quite annoying, while the screen shake happens quite frequently, so I highly recommend turning these 2 settings off for a more smooth gameplay feel and experience. Now, there's also show FPS, which is a setting that can actually only be used by PC players that will enable you to get some extra info about your game while you're playing. As the name suggests, it will show your in-game FPS. But that is not all it shows, it will also show you a PC usage, and inside the missions with other players, it might also be able to show you a ping to the host, so you can see how much ping you actually have and get an idea of how smooth the lobby is. This is a nice little setting for those PC players that want to see a little bit extra info while you're playing. And lastly here for the graphics settings, as I thought it would be a good idea to just show my graphics settings that I have and take a look at it while we're scrolling through, but keep in mind that my settings are made for streaming and recording, while I got a RTX 480 and a Ryzen 9 5950X for the CPU. And instead of talking over all of the settings as you see in the background here, we'll just scroll through the segments, and you can pause and copy to check the settings I use for whatever you might need here. Otherwise, I will leave a link down below to my full Warframe settings if you rather have it in pictures. Now for a very interesting setting called the Matchmaking region settings, as they are very interesting part of Warframe settings when it comes to online play. As in the network settings, we can actually change our region, which will be very important depending on where you live and when you play the game. So the region setting is the region you are playing on, and you will only get matchmake with other people playing on the same region as you, which could cause some issues if, let's say, you play on Europe, but you can only play at 4 AM in the morning CT time. Now you are playing on a region of your ping, but outside of the peak hours, and this could make it very hard to find lobbies or people to play with. So with that scenario, it could be better to change your region to maybe NA, and now you're playing with people people that are actually playing in the peak hours instead of the off hours as you were before. But do keep in mind that you will experience more ping doing it this way, but that is where the ping limit comes into play. The ping limit is a setting that allows you to actually only get matchmade with players inside a certain ping area. And if you want to become host more often, maybe you could lower the setting to around 100 to 150, but this is at the cost of finding more players for your lobbies, as now you only matchmake with people who have a good connection to you, which means less players. But you could also use this if you're playing from another region onto another region to maybe find people with a better connection to you instead of the region you're playing in. I usually just play on my own region on Europe and no limit to the ping, as I don't really care much if one match gets some lag a little bit here and there, and it usually happens quite rarely. Another setting you can play around with is the crossplay, which is a setting you can turn on and off as you see fit, and I personally recommend just having it turned on at all times to find more people to play with. But in the case that you are playing on a PC and you are specifically looking to farm loads of enemies in a mission, you might want to turn it off, as if you're matchmaking into someone who is hosting from an older console, the spawn count of enemies can be reduced up to about half of the enemies, as the older systems can have a hard time handling a lot of enemies on the same map, and this only happens if they are the host, as while you're hosting, you're basically hosting the entire map. So personally, I don't change the setting, as I usually just make my own squad or go in on solo when farming resources. In this way I can also pause the game if I need to. But I thought it would be a good idea to just mention it now, as we are in the network area settings and this is basically what crossplay affects. And when it comes to the chatting in Warframe, there's actually a few settings we can take a look at. First and foremost, you can enable something called region chat. I do not recommend doing this, but region chat is its own special little place in Warframe, and you can enable it and see what goes on in there. But you can also enable and disable other chats from this area, so I would recommend taking a look and maybe see in region chat what happens if you want to go in there. But normally just having all chat on is fairly common. There's also a setting called inline private messages, which is a very important setting I highly recommend turning off, as normally new private messages and other stuff might hit into your active chat. Meaning if someone whispers you and you are in a chat with another person, a private message chat, you will then see the other person whispers in that chat as well. Turning this off will actually keep the whispers separated from each other. So I recommend turning it off, so you have, if you do have different whispers or are trying to trade with other people, you don't actually cluster everyone in the same chat by accident and type a random message to another person which you are not supposed to whisper, and this will just make it overall a little bit easier when it comes to trading or keeping tabs with multiple people at the same time. Another thing here is the chat timestamps, which is also a very nice setting to turn on, so you now know when messages was sent and you can actually see when they were sent. So if you're checking clan chat and so on, you can see if the message was maybe an hour old or it's a new message, which is a very nice little feature to turn on, and I highly recommend turning it on. So if you want to chat with your squad mates or playing with friends and you don't need Discord, you could actually just talk in game in Warframe and turn it on, and you could talk with your squad in any missions you want to. The voice chat settings is disabled by default and is very niche from what I know, but if you have it enabled and join a squad with another member, when it is enabled you can talk to each other inside the squad. There's also a push to talk keybinds, which you can find in the keybinds section of Warframe, so you actually know what to press to talk in game. But you could just enable this and you probably at some point might run into some people that are actually using voice chat, or you could just ask at the beginning of lobbies if anyone is using voice chat and see if someone responds. Next up we have the keybind settings, where you can change quite a bit of your game feel by making some small changes here and there. Some useful keybinds are the gear hotkeys, which actually allows you to bind your gear wheel menu, allowing for much faster usage of items and missions. I personally like to have the Archwing keybinded for open world bounty, so it's easy to go into my Archwing and out of it. But you can keybind all the 12 first slots in your gear wheel, and then you can just change around the gear wheel items to fit your playstyle, as the keybinds will always stay the same that you have set them to, but you can change around where the different items are in your gear wheel menu. Another thing I like to keybind here is putting my hold to crouch on C as well, so it is easier to bullet jump around the map. But again, this is a personal preference, so decide if you want to join my C club here, or maybe you want to choose another keybinding. There's also the reverse camera keybind, which is a pretty interesting keybind, as you can actually switch sides in Warframe, so shooting over your right shoulder or shooting over your left shoulder is possible. And also your weapon technically shoots from the center of your screen, so changing sides will actually allow you to shoot around corners more easily. There's also the mission progress keybind, which is pretty interesting as it allows you to see the full mission breakdown instead of the small one you probably have seen before, as the keybind is more easily accessible. This one is a little bit out of the way on P normally, and if you press this in game you will be able to open the screen where you can scroll through all of your resources you have gathered in this current mission, instead of the normal just quick overview of the mission. And this is just a quick scroll down of all my keybind settings, as I haven't really changed much, but this is just a general feel so you can see what I have, and maybe copy if you want to. And now lastly here, the settings should only be accessible on PC because you will need the launcher to actually open up Warframe to see these settings. But before you actually click play inside the launcher when it's open, there's actually a little cogwheel up at the top right corner where you will be able to open up the launcher settings before opening the game. And the most notable setting here will probably be the choice of DX11 or DX12, which you can choose from here. For some people the game might run better on DX11 or 12, so if you are having lag problems or trouble with freezing sometimes, try changing your DX settings, fit your PC better and see if it continues to happen. So maybe try and change these around if you are having a little bit of lag in the game. But as Warframe has a lot of different settings and some of the ones we went over here today is only really scratching the surface. So if you really want to dig a little bit deeper into Warframe and tweak some settings, you could definitely find some to improve your game experience, and I highly recommend taking a look at all of the settings at least once so you know what you're going into. With that, you should be able to tweak your settings to improve your Warframe experience, and hopefully you have gotten all the information you came for. So I hope you found the video helpful, and if you did, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, it really does help a lot. And if you want more Warframe tips and tricks, check out my other videos as well, and come join us on the Discord server to be part of the community. And again, a big thanks as always to everyone supporting me here on the Patreon, YouTube and the Twitch as well we have up, so go check the Twitch channel up as well, as we are beginning to live stream here and there. So a big thank you to all of the people supporting around the places. Then all I have to say is stay tuned, stay tipsy, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace out.